Hello there, I'm Gloria Makarenko. You know, there is so much that we can learn from all the smart and talented people in our province, so let's go meet some of them. This is Our Vancouver. Coming up, a Vancouver comedian hopes to use his time in the spotlight to help others like him. And pro tips on preparing spot prawns from one of Vancouver's top chefs. But first, shedding new light on a dark part of Canadian history.
This place was so notorious, it came to be known as Canada's Alcatraz. Who died? How did they die? Where are they buried? And why have their graves gone unmarked for so long?
That is a clip from the video trailer for Kuper Island. It's an upcoming CBC audio podcast. So it's about the Indian residential school on a southern Gulf island. And it's hosted by our next guest, who you may recognize from his days as a Vancouver-based TV reporter. He was also the host of Cross Country Checkup. So Duncan McCue joins us from Toronto. Duncan, welcome.
Good to be here, Gloria.
Yeah, it's so good to see you too. How did this podcast come about?
Remember last summer, Gloria, when the news of unmarked graves was starting to, at residential schools, was starting to go right across the country. And it just seemed like school after school after school was announcing that they had graves on their former residential school properties. There was one announcement from Penelakut which caught my eye because, as you just mentioned, I'd been a reporter in BC for 20 years, and Penelakut announced that there were unmarked graves at the Kuper Island residential school. I had heard a lot of awful things about what had happened at the Kuper Island school. And so it caught my eye. And, this is a school that in its first 30 years of existence, nearly 40% of the children died. This is a school that survivors have referred to as Alcatraz because the school was on an island and it was impossible for children to get away from. Yet they kept on trying. I mean, you have to ask what was so bad about that place that children were running away into the Salish Sea to get away from it. So it was a story that I felt just needed to be told, and a podcast seemed like a perfect way to do it.
Well, sure. So, I mean, what was your motivation, I guess, for going right there, talking to these people, telling their stories?
I made one call early on, talked to the former chief of Penelakut, and she told me a story that just, it made the hairs on the back of my neck raise up, Gloria. She talked about how when the school was torn down in 1975, the community members started sensing the spirits of children. The children spirits were reaching out, touching them, appearing in windows, crying out. There was a sense of spiritual anguish in the place. And that's been happening in Penelakut for decades now. When I heard that, I just thought, this is not something that just showed up in the headlines last year, graves. This is something that Penelakut has been struggling with, how to make things right ever since the school closed down. And Penelakut, it has been dealing with it in spiritual ways, which is part of what we get into in the podcast. But also they were far ahead of everybody else in terms of bringing in ground penetrating radar to try to locate the body of their missing children. And they've been doing that work since 2014, really leading the way. And there are a lot of lessons to be learned from the pain that has brought up for Penelakut, but also some of the way forward.
So, Duncan, what can you do in a podcast that you couldn't do in another format, a TV or radio news story?
One of the things about podcasting, and podcasts have exploded, in the past couple of years, especially during the pandemic. People want that audio experience. Podcasts are intimate, and that's really a way to try to connect with listeners. But when you look into this kind of burgeoning podcast market, there's very little about residential schools. And last summer, we saw so many Canadians who were surprised or even shocked by the fact that so many children had died at residential schools, and they wanted to learn more. And if they wanted to hear a podcast about it, there weren't many places to turn. So that's why we decided the time was right for an in-depth look at deaths at residential school. This is grim. This is, it's not just a dark chapter in Canada's history, Gloria. This is, I would argue, our whole story, and it's something that the country needs to grapple with. But also, First Nations people right across this country are trying to figure out how to memorialize their children that never came home. And so, as I said, there are lessons to be learned, and Penelakut was very generous in sharing them with us.
Well, as you point out, the stories are grim, it's raw, and as an Indigenous journalist covering this, how does it feel to work on this podcast?
When I agreed to do this, Gloria, at the beginning, I knew it wasn't going to be easy. This is dark, but as I said, it's a story that needs to be told. I'm an Indigenous journalist, and I, here's the truth of the matter, Gloria. If Canada had its way, I may not be here. That was the whole point of residential schools, was to get rid of Indians, and so I think people need to hear that. But also, I'll just say one other thing. A podcast it's not just one quick interview that lasts 5 minutes. It lasts months and months and months. And we were spending a lot of time with families talking about deaths and abuse at the Kuper Island school. And I knew that was potentially very traumatic for them. And so as an Indigenous journalist, it was important for me to make sure that I wasn't causing more harm, that I wasn't hurting them more by picking around in their memories about these painful times, but that we were sharing truths and hopefully looking for a way forward in a way that was positive and healing for everybody. So that was heavy. It was heavy to build that relationship with the people in our podcast, but I remember that what's going to shine through for them is the same thing that just shone through for me, which is the courage, just the courage of the survivors who are sharing their story, both about what happened to them at the school and what happened to them in their families as well after the school, but also the courage of people to stand up and say, this system was wrong. Throughout the history of Indian residential schools, there were Canadians who stood up and said, this is wrong. Whether it was Dr. Bryce back in the 1920s who wrote a pamphlet called A National Crime because so many children were dying, whether it was Dolores Flans, who was a supervisor who's in our podcast, who witnessed sexual abuse happening and told her supervisor, and then ultimately ended up testifying in a criminal trial. There were Canadians all along who acknowledged that this was wrong, and yet the system continued. So I think people need to reflect on that, what it means for our country. But I also hope, as they're listening, that the courage of the people that are in our podcast really shines through.
Duncan, I'm so glad you've done this. Thank you very much. We look forward to listening.
Miigwech, Gloria, and it's really good to see you, and hi to all the viewers in British Columbia. Miss you.
Now, stories about residential schools can be unsettling, and if you or anyone you know needs support, you can access emotional and crisis referral services by calling the 24-hour residential school crisis line. That's 1-866-925-4419.
I'm Melanie. And I'm Daniela. And you're watching Our Vancouver.
All right, it's time for one of our favorite features. This is where we get to showcase a number of the photographs sent in by you, our audience. Let's start with this one. Renee Warren was out jogging one morning when he saw this colorful reflection for just a moment. No filters, he says. Well, that is just magical, Renee. Thank you for sharing. Norm Stack snapped this photo of a big black bear moving away in the Pitt River Greenway in Pitt Meadows. Stay safe, Norm. Thanks for sharing that one. And finally, Cheryl Smith captured these interesting patterns in the sand at sunset. Just gorgeous. Cheryl, thank you very much. And do send us more. It's easy. Just email your favorite photographs to us, bcphotos@cbc.ca. That's bcphotos@cbc.ca. Well, Metro Vancouver now has its first grab-and-go rental program for electric scooters. Richmond joins the list of cities offering the service that's popular in places like Seattle and Los Angeles. And as John Hernandez reports, it's all part of the growing e-scooter craze that's seeing more riders hitting the road.
The roads in Richmond are making way for a new fleet.
What you will see here today is just the start.
These e-scooter hubs have been installed in select locations across the city. It's the first grab-and-go sharing program of its kind in Metro Vancouver, a service popularized in cities along the West Coast.
In the cities that we've operated so far, residents and visitors have really taken to our service as a way to get around, take those first mile, last mile connections.
After signing up, riders simply scan with their phone and take off. For your first 3 rides, the speeds on these scooters is capped at 12 kilometers an hour, so new riders like me can learn the ropes.
We look forward to working with other municipalities right across the Lower Mainland to bring a similar service to their city.
E-scooters are only legal in 8 BC municipalities as the province is in the midst of a 3-year pilot project. Vancouver is among the participants, but it won't greenlight any sharing programs yet. Instead, it's taking a more cautious approach and collecting feedback.
A lot of people are apprehensive about having these things on the streets. There's always horror stories. Oh, I saw this electric unicycle, electric scooter driving past it, large speed, insert large speed here, and it's just kind of educating the public on responsible riding, how to use these things, where to use these things.
This shop owner says he's been loading up on stock ahead of the summer after quickly selling out last year.
Most certainly the biggest challenge in the company is, staying on top of our supply chain and making sure that we're stocked well for this.
And prices at the pump are helping to push shoppers through the door.
I've been back to Toronto, I've been here, and I've seen people on, the unicycles, the scooters, and it just seems like a really good sort of alternative to just having a car.
BC's pilot project will end in 2 years, but these rides likely won't go anywhere. A popular form of transit that's only picking up more speed. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
A Taiko drumming group, including a mother-daughter duo, has been practicing every week in Kelowna leading up to a show later this month. Winston Cito and Maggie McPherson put together this profile about what drumming means to them.
So Yamabiko means mountain echo. I think they created the name because we're surrounded by the valley here in Okanagan. 2003, I was studying at University of Toronto, and they were offering a Taiko course. After I graduated from university, I have come back to Kelowna. I saw there was a Taiko group here, and I thought it would be great to make friends, and that's how it just started.
Taiko in Japanese translates to big drum. The main shell of the drum is made of wood. On top is cowhide, and it's held in place with hundreds of little tacks. The shimedaiko is similar, but it's held together with rope. Back in the early 2000s, I saw Yamabiko Taiko perform, and obviously it involved drums, and I could also see that it was very physically vigorous. So I thought, wow, if I join Yamabiko Taiko, I can combine drumming with physical activity.
It's really doing great for my, I think, mental health for sure. Lots of stress relief there.
I had a health issue, so which is high blood pressure. So Taiko is lots of physical work, so maybe good for health. So that's why I decided to be a member.
We really like you to come out and see us perform. That's how we manage to survive as well. So I really would like everybody to be more curious. And not just about Taiko, I would like everybody to be curious about other culture, especially performances. It's fun.
Coming up, want to help track down comet trails amongst thousands of Hubble images? Johanna Wagstaffe will be here to tell us how.
To be fair, 37,000 images of anything is a lot to sift through, even if they were all captured by the Hubble telescope. And that's part of the reason an international group of astronomers initiated the Hubble Asteroid Hunter Citizen Science Project back in 2019 to identify asteroid streaks. The astronomers had collected these images between 2002 and 2021. They were used for observations of other scientific investigations, and the scientists thought, I wonder how many asteroid trails also appeared in these pics. So, 11,482 citizen scientists stepped up to the task. They classified the images, leading to the identification of almost 1,500 positive classifications. And it didn't stop there. The images of the trails were then used to train a machine learning algorithm, and the combined effort led to an additional 900 detections. About 1/3 of those are from known asteroids, but the rest newly discovered, which we can now add to our solar system's database. The vast majority of the newly discovered asteroids are likely to reside in the main belt between Mars and Jupiter, where the asteroids of such small sizes are poorly studied. The trails can provide astronomers with clues into the early conditions of the solar system during a time when the process of planetary formation was ongoing. The project participants also tagged other astronomical objects like gravitational lenses, galaxies, and nebulae. Volunteers discussed their findings and sought assistance from scientists during the project's forum. It just goes to show, one astronomer's trash can be another astronomer's treasure. And sometimes you just need a little help from the public. And now you're Science Smart. If you have a science question on your mind, send me a tweet or an email and I'll try to get it answered.
Hi, my name is Ambika.
Hi, my name is Varinder.
Hi, my name is Himanshi and this is my little brother.
And this is Our Vancouver.
Now, Vancouver is home to some of the world's much-loved seafoods, and this is the season to celebrate and enjoy spot prawns. And joining us to do that today is Julian Bond. Julian is a chef working with Organic Ocean. Hello there and welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have people back in studio, seriously. So what is Organic Ocean?
Organic Ocean is a fantastic company that, honestly, the best way to say it is take care of our oceans, making sure that we're buying from fishermen using sustainable practices and taking care of the fish actually in our ocean. So they're here for years to come.
Okay, let's talk about spot prawn
Yes.
season. What makes spot prawn so special?
They're from the Pacific Northwest, especially BC in our beautiful waters. It's a very short season, usually lasts for about 40 days. And the cool thing is, it's so well managed that we're going to leave our prawns behind to breed and come back again and again and again. So the season only opens after these guys have already, majority have laid their eggs, or as the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, they put the ocean into quads, and if it's laying eggs again, or they're changing from male to female, then we'll shut down the area. So we have lots and lots of prawns. Really hard to fish too. I mean, you don't fish these with a troll, you with a trap.
Okay.
So extremely labor intensive. A lot of hours.
Labor intensive. We're doing so many stories right now about the increase in fuel prices and the effect on our food supply. And I guess that applies to the people who are catching spot prawns as well.
Absolutely. I mean, dropping one trap in at a time, putting it at the bottom of the ocean just to bring up a couple of prawns at a time. Right. The diesel fuel's doubled. I mean, even the cost of lubricants, just for the gears, the amount of gears on a fishing vessel. We all talk about lorries and trucks, but what about our poor fishermen out in the boats trying to make a living? And it's not a guaranteed living. You have no idea what you're going to catch season after season after
No,
season.
that's a good point. It's a good point when you see the prices that might shock you initially to think about everything that has gone into catching these and bringing these fresh little beauties.
Yeah,
our
people
way.
don't think twice about the price of lobster
Yeah.
or the price of Dungeness crab. And if anything, pound for pound, this is much better than a lobster.
Okay, so these are live little ones.
These
So
are live little ones.
Now we do want to do, if you're feeling a little bit queasy, maybe turn away a little bit. You can still listen to our conversation about spot prawns. We just wanted to give you a little bit of a
Over
a warning
really,
for-
really fast. So when you buy them from a day boat, and again, it's a day boat industry while the season is going, and the rest of the time you can buy them all year round, frozen, and we freeze them actually in purified ocean water. So it's a beautiful freezing method. So if you get them from the day boat, you need to process them as fast as you can.
Okay,
And the
don't
best
put
way
them
to-
away in the refrigerator. Say we'll have it in dinner in a couple of days or
Oh,
anything.
no. Because what
Right.
happens, the actual stomach releases an enzyme, and it makes the tails go mushy. So if you want a beautiful firm prawn, you're just going to hold it like this, tail down, and you just do a quick twist. Look at that.
Okay.
It's easy. If you're really brave, you can suck the heads.
Okay.
We're not going to do that
right
today.
now.
No.
Not
But these make awesome soup, bisque.
Yes, no, I
stuff.
can smell. This smells like the sea.
Oh, it
It
is.
smells like the sea. It smells incredibly fresh.
And you know, when we go down the day boat as well, we also make people eat one just like this. And you're like, oh my gosh, is it safe to eat?
Right.
And I like to use the analogy of an apple that people eat, and we have no idea where that apple came from, where it was stored for the winter season, when it was picked. Where this came from the ocean literally this morning. I'm going to peel it, which is a little harder when it's fresh.
This is the ultimate sushi. Is that
And
what you're
this,
telling me?
I'm not joking, is, here it comes, there we go, is the ultimate sushi. You put that on rice, it's sweet, tastes like the ocean, crystal clear waters. Oh, it's so delicious.
Okay.
Now, how do you cook them?
How do you cook them?
The best way to cook them is really easy. You boil a kettle.
Yep.
These are the live prawns in here. I got my little one peeled. And they're going to kick around a little bit, but honestly, once the boiling water goes in there, oops, it's dripping. They are
That's it. So you don't
done.
put the prawns into the boiling. Well, you would do that if you had it on your stove into the boiling water, but you don't have to keep it boiling. Is your point?
Ideally, you don't want to do that.
Okay.
Because if you put the prawns in the boiling water, you may forget them and you may overcook them. So
Okay.
doing it this way, this water is really, really hot. You can actually see they're cooking already, and the water is very, very hot. So I can't handle the prawns. So the moment that you can actually handle the water is when the prawns are cooked.
Okay.
Another good idea is get your barbecue really hot, open the lid of the barbecue, and just do that dump with the seawater, the ocean water, a little bit of seaweed, close it. Oh, and they're going to be beautiful.
Only in a few minutes. Like
Only
you
a few
got-
minutes.
Don't
few minutes.
overcook. That's the
Less
whole
is
point.
more. So honestly, some people say 30 seconds, some people say a minute. I'm a minute kind of guy, and they're good to go and easier to peel. Just
Okay.
grab a cloth.
Perfect. Good.
So what we're going to do today is we're going to make a taco with them.
Okay.
So
Ideal.
easy, simple recipe. Some of the best tacos is you want to showcase the spot prawn. So in here we've got pickled vegetables. This is carrot, some daikon, and cucumber. And I'm just going to grab some of that. And this you can do a day ahead. Just beautiful vegetables. Whoop, dripping the vegetables
Okay, it's all good.
everywhere.
It's all good.
It's all good. You know, usually
I'm going to clean up after you. Don't
Thank
you worry.
You're an angel.
Good
And
at that
I
part.
usually use my fingers, that's why.
I can smell that too. Is that a
So
little bit
that
of a pickly?
has got some fish
pickly-
sauce in there. This is called a nok cham vinaigrette from Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And you can buy it already made as a vinaigrette. I'm just going to put some carrot into that one.
Little bit of
Next,
color. Yes.
because the prawns are sweet, mango. And I've spiced up the mango. So if you want to grab some of that mango for me.
Spiced it with.
This is a little Mexican seasoning. So it's a little chili and zest of lime.
Oh, love it. How many per? Like a
Oh,
couple-
it depends on how much you like them.
Okay, well,
It's
they
beautiful.
look gorgeous and fresh, and these are just in prime season as well. Isn't that beautiful?
keeping
The
it
color
fruity.
combination, the carrots, the mangoes,
And looking good already. This is just a little mayonnaise that I spiced with a little peach hot sauce. And it's just going to act as
Did
a
you
little
say peach hot sauce?
peach hot sauce.
Okay.
Johnny's Peach Hot Sauce, just over to the side there, is a gorgeous local BC company. So that's Thompson. He makes it here in BC. This is Johnny. He makes his hot sauce in BC. That comes all the way from Mexico.
All the way- yep,
We
I've
want-
got that.
But a beautiful
For
thing.
sure.
And it's
Okay.
gorgeous just like that. So here's some prawns that I've pre-cooked.
Lovely.
Some
Thank
that I
you for
kept
doing
raw.
all the prep
No
on
problem.
that.
So, you know, the prawn season is very, very shallow. It's very short, 4 weeks, and then next thing you know, it's over with. But that's not the end of spot prawns. You want to keep buying spot prawns year round, keep supporting our local fishermen. So these are tails from last season.
Oh, I see.
So these were frozen, cleaned, ready for you in a freezer in the ocean water, as I mentioned earlier.
Right.
And you buy them in the tails. You can cook them in the tails. You can peel them raw like I did here.
Yes.
You can cook them in the tails for a lovely little cocktail.
Right.
And again, as I peeled the raw one was a little difficult, but when you peel these ones, it's a lot easier once they're cooked in the shell.
Okay.
And people say it has more flavor.
So if you more flavor cooked in the shell.
Yes.
That's kind of the bottom line, right? I was going to ask you what you
And then you
prefer.
can chop up your prawns if you wish. You can dice them. I like, those ones over there I diced. These ones, we're gonna make it look even better. And then just a little greenery.
A little bit of green. So
these are pea tips.
Yep. Oh, these are, no, these aren't.
Oh,
pea
no,
tips.
they're cilantro.
Those cilantro. These are pea tips.
I'll do the cilantro, you do the pea tips.
Okay.
And you just do it sporadically. Don't make them fancy. Just do your thing.
Tear them up a little bit.
And just adds a little bit of greenery. You're doing it better than I am. Look at that.
I have the touch.
You have the touch. You've been doing it perfect. And if you don't have these fancy taco holders, just grab a skewer. These are my little salmon skewers.
Thank you.
And they're great at just exactly what
So I don't have to do this on camera and sort of try to bite in. Just take a little bit of I'm going to get a little bit of mango.
Yep.
I'm going to get a little bit of the pickle. Well, maybe I'm not.
There you go. Just bite in if you wish.
So
it's up
juicy.
to you. Oh, there you go. Now you're going to get the beautiful prawn.
Oh, that is so gorgeous.
Sweet, succulent.
Delicate.
Just enough of a chew.
And just enough sweetness as well.
Just as you bite through it all.
Julian Bond, thank you so much for coming
My
in.
pleasure.
And enjoy the next month of the fresh
Oh my gosh,
prawns.
it's going to be a good season. Thank you.
I don't got money that lawyers can buy. I don't got my own government's laws on my side.
If you'd like to go and see some live music, Alberta country singer-songwriter Corb Lund is playing 3 nights at Wise Hall, Wednesday, May 18th to Friday, May 20th. And Australian singer-songwriter Hatchie is playing the Fortune Sound Club with American dream pop musician Caroline Loveglove, Thursday, May 19th.
Hey, I'm Grant Lawrence from CBC Music, and over the years, we've seen several next-generation Canadian musicians who have followed in their older family members' footsteps. There's Dustin Bentall, son of Barney Bentall. There's Tal Bachman, son of Randy Bachman, and Rufus and Martha Wainwright, the kids of Loudon Wainwright and Kate McGarrigle, and that's just to name a few. Well, it's time to add to the Canadian family music album, this time with 22-year-old Georgia Harmer. From her debut album, Stay in Touch, those are the dulcet indie rock tones of Georgia Harmer on her song Top Down. Georgia is based in Toronto, and she is, trivia fans, the niece of Sarah Harmer, one of Canada's most beloved singer-songwriters, and aunt and niece are label mates on Arts and Crafts Records. Georgia and Sarah come from a family with lots of poets and artists and touring musicians. In fact, before Georgia broke out on her own career, she was a backup singer for Grammy winner Alessia Cara.
In April we met the boys down in the park with a frisbee, steal my bike and ride, diamond eyes, there is something about you with a smile. I'd yet to find a name for the feeling I got from words you slipped to me. Did you know that I'd remember them all?
Beautiful. Recorded in the rain in Toronto last year, that was Georgia Harmer with her song Talamanca. As you've heard so far, you may be picking up on some classic musical references like maybe Joni Mitchell or more contemporary influential nods to the weather station or always in Georgia Harmer's sound. Here's another song, a great up-tempo indie rocker, befit for the energy of a 22-year-old.
Summertime, a blinded light from across the lake. I could see a storm inside, but everyone said something so special doesn't come around all the time. Falling down the ground caught me gently. Look right at me, I can tell you're blind. If it was all in my mind, doesn't matter
That is newcomer Georgia Harmer with an indie rock jam of goodness called All in My Mind. And Georgia Harmer is on tour now across Western Canada with another arts and crafts records label mate, Dan Mangan. All in My Mind is a song that you need to add to your feel-good Canadian indie rock playlist for this week. I'm Grant Lawrence from CBC Music. I'll check in with you again soon.
Coming up, how the trend toward bigger cars is making the roads more dangerous. Hello, welcome back to Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. Now, Yute Lee explores the issues in our neighborhoods that affect our daily lives. And this week, he turns his lens to the streets. Bigger cars are becoming more popular. The problem? They're making the roads deadlier for other vehicles and pedestrians, too.
We're going to try an experiment.
Now all around me are the wrong things, and I can spot a sucker when I take a swing. Hands full of memories and I can make them sing. Bring you to the promised land and let your bell ring.
An SUV, or sport utility vehicle, is 2 to 3 times more likely to kill a pedestrian in a collision compared to a regular car. Why? Well, it's a design issue. A key feature of an SUV is that it sits higher off the ground than most cars. If this car hits a pedestrian, its bumper is colliding with the person's ribcage and vital organs. But more importantly, it's directly hitting their center of gravity, which means this SUV is more likely to push the pedestrian forwards and run over them. Compare that to a regular car like the sedan. With its lower height, a sedan is more likely to clip a pedestrian's legs and send them flying on top of its hood, which is designed to be bouncy like a metal trampoline. Still very painful, but not as fatal. Now, many people are concerned about this because SUVs are actually becoming very popular. In 2020, the light truck segment of cars, which includes SUVs, pickups, and vans, accounted for 80% of new car sales in Canada, a share that's been growing for the last decade. At the same time, sedan sales have fallen off a cliff. The future of road traffic is looking very SUV, super unsafe for vertebrates. And the data is increasingly showing that. Pedestrian deaths have actually been increasing in recent years. According to a study by the OECD, Canada reported a 5.6% increase in pedestrian deaths between 2010 and 2018, while cyclists and drivers all saw decreases. But this trend is really apparent when you look at data coming from the US. Pedestrian deaths had been decreasing since the 80s, but in the last decade, they've been sharply rising again. Many are now pointing the finger at SUVs for playing a significant role in that increase. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, SUVs account for about a third of pedestrian collisions in the US, but closer to 40% of the fatalities. But there is another side to this story that I think is very important to get into. Why are people buying SUVs in the first place? SUV owners are among the most satisfied with their vehicles. According to a Volkswagen survey, 87% of them have no plans of ever buying another kind of car. There are many reasons behind this love affair: space, comfort, and flexing on minivan owners. But there's one reason that really stands out to me: safety. In a study of vehicle deaths between 2015 to 2018, sedans registered 48 deaths per million owners every year. That number for SUVs was 25. Almost half. Dig deeper into the data and you see a clear trend. The bigger the vehicle, the less likely the risk of death for its passengers. You can see that in other large vehicles like minivans and pickup trucks. By that same token, smaller cars were more likely to be deadlier cars. The deadliest car in this study was the Ford Fiesta, a mini sedan which registered 141 deaths per million owners every year. The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, who wrote this study, puts it plainly: A bigger, heavier vehicle provides better crash protection than a smaller, lighter one, assuming no other differences. An SUV is a bigger car, and that makes it a safer car. But that creates a whole new issue. A bigger car is also more dangerous to a smaller car. This concept is called crash incompatibility. In a crash involving two similar-sized cars, both vehicles inflict a similar amount of damage to each other. But when a crash involves a smaller car and a larger car, the smaller car is toast. A study from the University of California found that being hit by a vehicle that is 1,000 pounds heavier than your own is 40 to 50% more likely to be fatal. So here's the problem. More people buying SUVs is likely creating a feedback loop. It's the survival of the biggest. In a world where SUVs are becoming more and more popular, smaller vehicles become more dangerous, and people have a very compelling reason to buy a bigger car. In 2004, economist Michelle White wrote that drivers have been running an arms race by buying increasingly large vehicles. So there's clearly a dilemma here. I think it's understandable for people to want a car that is safer in an accident, but that desire is actually making our roads more dangerous. So I think the answer here is to ban them. Ban all SUVs. I'm not even kidding. Last year, the European Transport Safety Council recommended banning SUVs altogether in towns and cities across the EU. Cities like London, Paris, and Florence have considered restrictions on SUVs as well. So what are we waiting for, North America? Let's ban every... So that admittedly was kind of my opinion going into this story, but I think there's a less heavy-handed and frankly more important discussion to have here. We actually have a history of making cars much safer. In the 80s, governments introduced safety standards that required seatbelts, airbags, and crumple zones in our vehicles. Over the years, those safety features have reduced passenger fatality rates to about half of what they were before. Many are now calling for similar standards that require cars to have safety features for pedestrians. This could include alterations to the front bumper or technological solutions. The SUV you see in this video is equipped with sensors that can detect pedestrians and automatically apply the brakes. These pedestrian safety standards already exist in Japan and the European Union, but they're virtually non-existent in the US and Canada. The only line that mentions pedestrians in Canada's motor vehicle safety regulations is about how you can't have sharp mirrors. For decades, we've very successfully focused on improving the design of cars to make them safer for people inside them. But the rise of SUVs and pedestrian deaths really opens up a new discussion. Perhaps it's time we started thinking about the safety of those outside vehicles as well.
Through the back, I'm bumping all day. Say something, say nothing, and that be okay. I'm balling and stunting and something that's ugly, but punking, I'm stunting, so that is okay.
Coming up, how a hard-working Vancouver comedian hopes to create opportunities for others. You are watching Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. Now, a Vancouver comedian is having big success on the biggest stage of his life. And as Liam Britton explains, he hopes to use his talent to help others like him.
I live in Vancouver now, and it's really funny when I tell people I'm from Fort McMurray, Alberta.
Ola Dada had judges cracking up on Canada's Got Talent.
And they're like, no, you're lying. I'm like, listen to me. Nobody lies about growing up in Fort McMurray, Alberta. And if I was gonna lie, I'd probably say Wakanda. And that is still more believable than a black guy from Fort McMurray, Alberta.
His comedy centers on his prairie upbringing, his family, and working at a bank with a name that some might mistake for a Nigerian prince scammer.
I sat down and looked at my own email, and I thought to myself, if I received an email from an Oluwumi Samuel Mubarak Dada, I wouldn't even open that. No, I wouldn't.
He's now headed to the semifinals. A big stage for someone who's only been performing comedy for 5 years.
That's why I'm even more grateful
for with the ability to have this opportunity, right? So it makes me work even harder to make sure I don't let, not only myself down, but also like the scene, and even just comedy in general, because I know how much hard work it is to be in a position like this.
Dada got his first taste of performing right here. During a comedy night, he asked if he could go up.
Got an opportunity to make fun of my friends in front of the audience. It was like a feeling I'd never really experienced before. And then the lady told me like, oh, next time I perform, I get a slice of pizza. I'm like, what? I get a slice of pizza just to tell jokes? I was like, I'm here every week. I'm lactose intolerant too.
Like many comedians, a big challenge is bouncing back after bombing. But Dada has also faced heinous racism. Someone even called him the N-word on stage.
I've been fortunate enough to be raised by such amazing parents, where like that word doesn't affect me the way it used to. My job kicks in, I find something humorous about it, I make that person look stupid, and then we keep it moving.
He's grateful for the support of fellow Vancouver comedians to help him grow as a writer and performer. And he wants to help more black comedians and comedians of color get on stage.
My name is Enola Dada. Thank you so much, guys.
Liam Britton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Hi, I'm Graham Witt at Parallel 49 Brewing, and you're watching Our Vancouver.
There's been a lot of discussion these days about crime and policing, what the problems are and the best ways to address them. Now, about 30 years ago, there was a focus on car theft, and radio DJs were called on to help catch the crooks. Here's Ian Hannamansing with that report.
For the past week, people in Vancouver have been waking up to something a bit different on the radio.
Now, another Zed Hot Car Alert.
This is one of several stations asking listeners to look out for stolen cars.
Zed 95.3 FM and the police want your help in following stolen car. It's a 1990 red Nissan Pathfinder sport truck.
Police in Vancouver and the suburb of New Westminster got the idea from the Seattle police. Every morning, they review the calls to this 911 center and pick one stolen car to focus on. They usually have a lot to choose from. Here at the police impound lot are some of the 14,000 cars stolen in BC each year. That's double the number from just 6 years ago. Most are taken by so-called joyriders, usually young people, who take advantage of how easy it is to punch out an ignition and take a car for a spin.
Well, the first thing was I was really shocked.
Annalise Dutch's Jeep was stolen from outside her home Thursday morning. She says she feels much more vulnerable to crime.
It makes you definitely, think twice about, closing your curtains, for example, and, making sure you lock your door when you even just go to the corner store or something like that.
Her vehicle was recovered, but like in most stolen car cases, police hold out little hope of finding the culprits.
We try, but you're right. We can't find the bad guy. There isn't at that time enough clues to follow up on.
Call 911 immediately.
Part of the reason for this so-called hot car program is to focus public attention on how big a problem car theft has become. But the main goal is to try to persuade those who steal cars that a lot of people may be out there looking for them. In the first 6 days of this radio campaign, tips from listeners have led the police to the suspected thieves of 2 cars. Ian Hannamansing, CBC News, Vancouver.
When we bring you these stories here at CBC Vancouver, we have award-winning photographers out capturing the images that say so much. Still images can add context and bring a lot more to the understanding of an event or an issue. So here are some of the latest images from what happened this past week. And that's all for Our Vancouver for this week. I hope you can join me weekday afternoons on CBC Radio 1 for On the Coast. For now, bye-bye.